Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer, Women of the Scriptures Unveiled. Today, we're doing something a bit different. We're going to step right past those well-known narratives, the ones we've all heard 1,000 times, and we're venturing straight into the quiet, often unlit corners of Scripture. We're looking for those spaces where women lived, where they endured, believed, and were truly seen by God, even when the rest of the world barely noticed they were there.
Okay, let's dive into this. Have you ever felt totally overlooked? Seriously, really think about it. Have you ever felt like your obedience, your hard work, or just your day-to-day faithfulness goes completely unseen? Or maybe, you felt like you're just a background character in someone else's much bigger, more important story. Well, if you have, the texts we're exploring today are going to show you that you are absolutely not alone. So many of the women we're examining lived in that exact same space.
And this brilliantly illustrates the contrast we're talking about. Look, we all know the prominent names that echo through generations, right? Esther, Ruth, Mary. You know them well. But when we actually look deeper into the text, it reveals a totally different reality. We start to find unfamiliar women whose stories are, well, incredibly brief. In a lot of cases, they don't even have a name. But make no mistake, their presence in the text is just as intentional, purposely preserved for us to discover right alongside the giants of history.
Because their lives, they aren't just filler text. Their choices absolutely mattered. The lives of these hidden women carry massive historical and spiritual weight. Even if they weren't the center of the main narrative or, celebrated by the masses, their quiet actions literally moved mountains and shaped the entire course of history.
And they matter because their faith speaks. Honestly, that is exactly what this explainer is all about. We're looking closer, not to add anything new to Scripture, definitely not, but to draw out the profound significance of what has always been there, sitting right beneath the surface. We're here to ask the deeper questions about these lives that might look small at a glance, but are actually packed with incredible meaning.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the historical context. To really get this, we have to look at antiquity. In biblical times, many women lived within these incredibly rigid structures that heavily limited their visibility in public spaces. It limited their voice, and it drastically limited their influence. This explains exactly why these women were unseen by society. They carried such a heavy cultural weight, existing in a world that structurally marginalized them from the public eye. Yet despite all those intense limitations, look at these undeniable instances where God moved so powerfully. I mean, we've got an unnamed widow giving her last meal to sustain a prophet during a severe drought, a young captive servant girl pointing a powerful Syrian military commander toward healing, a mother holding onto her dignity and fighting for her family in the face of unspeakable grief, and a wise woman negotiating across a wall to stop the total destruction of her city with literally nothing but her words. These aren't minor details in a larger book. These are profound, divine moments where God used marginalized individuals to change everything.
But what makes these women truly remarkable isn't just what they accomplished. It's the power of how they did it. Just look at how they responded. Some acted boldly. Some endured quietly. Some spoke up when literally no one else would. And some simply remained faithful in circumstances they never, ever would have chosen for themselves. Their diverse responses prove that God was intimately and deeply present in their lives through the whole shebang, working. In those quiet, unseen moments where society completely overlooked them, God was present. He was actively working behind the scenes, weaving their silent obedience into a massive, grand tapestry. Seeing, even when the broader world looked right past them, offering zero recognition, God's gaze was fixed firmly on them. They were never, ever invisible to him. Responding. The text shows us over and over that he actively reacted to their quiet faithfulness, stepping right into their stories, honoring their endurance and their absolute courage.
Let's move to and see how this builds our framework for uncovering the truth in future stories within this explainer series. Whenever we look at one of these women, we aren't just going to read a verse and move on. No way. First, we'll examine her world and the specific pressures surrounding her. Second, we're going to identify the real, tangible risks she took. And third, we will reveal her faith and ask the most important question: what does her story teach us about God? Because this isn't just about uncovering women, it's about uncovering truth.
Now, as we do this, we're going to have to face some hard truths. There will be uncomfortable moments, for sure. These stories, they aren't always easy, nicely wrapped packages. They involve real grief, deep injustice, forced silence, and profound suffering. But they are recorded for a reason. And I promise you, we are going to approach these difficult realities with absolute honesty, reverence, and care.
rather than just skipping over them. We really want to understand what God reveals, even in the darkest parts.
So, the crucial point is this: what feels hidden is often holy. God simply doesn't measure significance the way our world does. The world might measure you by public recognition, by who sees you, right? But God measures by faithfulness. And wow, that is an incredibly empowering, comforting truth for anyone who feels like their sacrifices are invisible. Which brings me to a question I want you to really sit with today. What if your most unseen areas are where God is doing his most intentional work? What if the places where you feel the absolute most overlooked are exactly where the strongest foundation is being poured? Just think about that as we prepare for our next explainer, where we're going to feature a woman whose wisdom literally saved an entire city, despite her name rarely ever being spoken.
I want to leave you with this massive final anchor thought to wrap up today's explainer. What God sees in you matters more than what the world overlooks. So ask yourself, if these unnamed women could shift the course of history from the shadows, what incredible, unseen work might God be preparing to do through you?